Woo! Welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We've got so much to get into today. Bloomington, they okayed the shelter village plan. Okay, so this is Home Sweet Home Ministries. They're going to turn this Connect Transit site into housing for the homeless. And we're going to play some of Councilmember Sheila Montney's comments from the Bloomington City Council meeting. This was Mayor Dan Brady's first council meeting, by the way, fun fact. So we're going to get into that a little bit, and then we're also going to look at Illinois lawmakers proposing thousands of new woke bills, including legalizing prostitution. You're able to assault a police officer, and I'm sure this comes from that whole situation. I think it was in Springfield. I'd have to look into it, but it was this woman, and she threw a pot of boiling water, and she was definitely mentally ill. Cop totally acted out, way out. Totally not a good cop, I would say, but she did wield a deadly weapon, a pot of boiling water, against an officer, and he responded by shooting her. Okay, so I think that's where this bill comes from. It's where you, I think that's what this bill is in response to. So we're going to get into that bill, but where you can assault a police officer as long as you say I did it out of mental illness. Essentially, that's what the bill says. So we're going to get to that bill and a couple of others. There's been thousands that have been proposed. Some are pretty insane, more insane than you could imagine. But if you've been following this show, you know that if you can dream it, they'll do it. So we're going to get into it. Democrat Shri Thanedar, he officially introduced actual articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. So we're going to get into that as well. Let's get into the Bloomington City Council meeting, though, because they recently voted, and this is sort of kind of a big deal. At first, I wasn't against this because it looked like there wasn't going to be any money really allocated to this. Now, I'm hearing that it's going to cost $2.65 million to build this thing as far as money goes, and it's going to cost around $700,000 a year to run. Okay, now what are they exactly building here? This is 48 sleeping cabins, apparently 40 for individuals, 8 that could house couples. Okay, so 40 for individuals, 8 are for like 2 people to live in. These are like mini homes. And I'm not totally against the idea, but now I'm hearing that there's possibly a plan that this is going to be a mix of private donations, which I'd totally be all for, as long as we're not using taxpayer dollars to build these units. Totally all for that, whatever, and, it's going to the Connect Transit Spade property over there on Main and Oakland. I don't think that that's a big loss, right? It was the Connect Transit. And if we're selling them the property, big whoopity do. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I didn't think of this. There are going to be a lot of unintended consequences here. And Councilmember Sheila Montney, she raised concerns about potential increases to police, fire, EMS calls that could go out to there. And now I'm hearing that this is going to be a mix of private donations, public funds, including help from like state and federal grants. So yeah, I mean, there's nobody's having the actual conversation. Why is there a homelessness issue? Are these people wanting the help, or are they too drug addicted and they don't actually want the help and want to leave homelessness? There are people who are like that, where they're mentally ill or they are too addicted to drugs, where they don't want to have a better life. And we need to address that problem, probably more so. And I'd say open up the mental institutions and court-ordered drug rehabilitation, and send them to a rehabilitation center. You have probably encountered this in your personal life, or if not, you've met somebody where somebody is homeless or somebody is a drug problem and somebody is, down on their luck. I'm sure you have encountered somebody on a personal level or know somebody who's encountered this on a personal level. So what's the plan? Home Sweet Home Ministries, they want to turn this into something called The Bridge, which is basically a small shelter for people experiencing homelessness. So for people who are homeless. So the council was totally on board. Well, at least they voted unanimously on this. This is the green light, which means home sweet home. They can move forward with buying this land and get the ball rolling. Councilmember Sheila Montney, though, she raised concerns about the unintended consequences and how this is going to cost the taxpayers. And is this actually going to solve the problem of homelessness and actually eradicate it? Or, in fact, as we've seen in other areas around the nation who have done something like this, it could dramatically increase the issue of homelessness. You know, the big question no one could really answer is how many homeless people who are chronically homeless, okay, and how many people are chronically homeless in Bloomington right now? According to a HUD report, Housing Urban Development report, at a federal level in 2024, there were 21 people. So something is not mathing here. We're creating 48 units, but the recent HUD report says that there are 21 people who are unsheltered, and all of them are without children. Okay, the 21 homeless people are without children. They don't have children, so no homeless children right there. At least according to this report. Now, there probably was other studies done. Montney had claimed that there was a local study done in January of this year, but the results haven't been published or issued. People say that there are 50 chronically homeless or 50 homeless people, but I don't know where that number is coming from, to be honest with you. I'm looking at the HUD report, and the HUD report says 21 unsheltered people. You know, and we need to answer this question. How many people are actually chronically homeless? Are these projects drawing homeless people into Bloomington? So say you have 40 units, there's only 21 homeless people in Bloomington, right? I'm just going by the HUD report, right, in 2024. BLN News has the actual report, the primary documentation you can take a peek at. So if that's the case, then there's going to be, 20 plus units available for homeless individuals, and we're going to be drawing those chronically homeless people into Bloomington, which increases the homeless population here in Bloomington, right? And are we going to use this shelter for temporarily homeless situations? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but one thing I like what Sheila Montney did, she, raised concerns and brought facts to the table. Statistics from around the nation here, other municipalities, other cities that have done this kind of thing, micro communities for homeless individuals, and she brought the statistics here, and really the statistics, I'll sum it up for you. It shows that these micro communities actually don't work. They might even be worse to with the homeless, because it actually attracts homeless individuals, and they wind up like not staying in these units. They wind up leaving, and it's just a mess. And a lot of the facts she presented were really something to have a conversation about. Take a listen.
What I haven't seen in the discussions in the last year is a robust discussion about how we ended up where we are today. And I think it's important to have that conversation. I think this council should be provided with information to help ground us in the history and in the significant increases that it appears have occurred in our community over these last few years. I understand from reading articles in the news that a continuum of care homeless assessment was done approximately the week of January the 30th of this year. I haven't been able to find record of that report online, but I did find reference of a quote from that report on WTLT indicating an unhoused population, which I believe is analogous to what Matt Burgess shared on March 17th as those who were unhoused, period, not in any of our local shelters. I wasn't able to find the current report online. However, I did find the HUD reports for 2020, 2022, 2024. And if you haven't had the opportunity to take a look at those, you can find those by Googling. I bring this up because it's of grave concern to me how we went from, in that particular category, in 2022, again, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, an unsheltered population of 22 people, to in 2024, 60. And then in 2025, again, just referencing the WGLT article, because I have seen no other reports, despite requesting it several times since I learned that that count was out there, from 60 to 130. To me, that is incredibly significant to see that type of increase. And I think it's imperative that we all kind of understand how that happened. So to ground myself in understanding, those trends in other communities, I know there's a concept that we're discussing that is likely going to move forward in this shelter as being one of low barrier or no barrier, which essentially will allow people who are currently having struggles with addiction, something that I know is very significant issue, and many of us have personal experiences with that subject, to be in this facility without requiring care. And so just again, looking back and replaying the March 17th discussion and going and look at the other communities that were cited in that, I just wanted to share the statistics from Denver that were discussed came from the overall all-in Mile High dashboard, which is page 1, and that page still exists on the dashboard for the city of Bloomington. Up until April the 24th, that dashboard also included a page 3, which was specifically the data just from the micro communities and hotels. So that was the low barrier, no barrier population. The outcomes and exits from that particular segment in Denver is significantly concerning to me. When you look at this, 19 of them have passed away, 258 returned to homelessness, 61 of them in jail, and 105 of them unknown, which according to a newspaper article I read, the mayor said, if it's unknown, it's generally a negative outcome. And when you look at the transition specifically from the micro communities, I'm not going to read all the statistics because I think it would be more helpful for people to actually read the statistics themselves, because I certainly don't want to just be sharing my personal views from what I saw in these articles, but there's plenty to read out there. The other study that
Okay, so I wanted to play a little bit of that, and to sum it up, essentially, is in Denver they've got these micro communities, and the point is homelessness. If they don't want, they all re-entered homelessness, despite the micro community. So you're going to pour out, taxpayer dollars, the increase of EMS, the increase of fire, the increase of police over to this micro community. The taxpayers are going to be on the hook for that. And is it going to be worth it? You heard from those statistics, people wound up dead. They wound up re-entering homelessness. And I want to be clear, the HUD report, 21 chronically homeless people unsheltered. She laid out the statistics. It was 60. I'm looking at the HUD report right now. 60, that's total homeless households. Okay, total homeless households unsheltered. So that's what we're looking at, the HUD report. And charity was never the job of the government. This project is going to wind up costing the Bloomington taxpayers. Now, Montney also emphasized the importance of involving the neighboring town of Normal in the project, suggesting that their participation could also help potential future costs and impacts to the Bloomington taxpayers. So yeah, there was some sort of additional hey, let's involve the town of Normal in on this project, so that way we can relax or ease the burden on the Bloomington taxpayers, because Yeah, there's going to be some unintended consequences. So I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to hit this a little bit more, and then we're going to talk about these bills that have been introduced by Illinois lawmakers that are totally woke, totally insane. Think of the most insane thing and then double it. That's what the Illinois lawmakers have been introducing this legislative session. I'll be right back. I'm going to play a little bit more here. This is important, folks. I don't want you to, get bored on me because people think that this kind of stuff is boring, but it's very important. Sheila Montney, she brought the facts, and you can let feelings dictate your governance, but you really shouldn't. Take a listen to this other study that she's got. Here we go.
That I provided to staff relates to an analysis of what happened with a similar approach in Seattle. And in this approach, what they learned, and this was also true in Denver, that once they started down the housing first process, their homeless population at the same time increased. I think the study in Seattle is something that I would encourage everyone to read. It does show some very interesting trends. As you look back in their history and where they are at the time of that study, which was at the end of 2024, from where they were, they also saw a significant increase in homelessness. And in that case, 50% of the increase was attributed to people who actually moved into the area without having ties to the community. And I know this has been discussed, and I have no information to suggest that's happening here. I don't mean to imply that whatsoever. However, I think it's important for us to know that these things are out there so that we have eyes wide open and can apply appropriate governance as we move forward, with this resolution this evening. The other information that's out there that I think has already been mentioned, and it's been planned for according to the March 17th presentation, is that we can anticipate a significant amount of law enforcement and EMT services that are going to be provided. And as we do move forward, we are taking on that on behalf of really, our neighboring communities as well. And we just need to be aware, eyes wide open, that is out there. So for comparison, last comment, I know Denver is a big city, but the micro communities that they had that actually our slides are patterned after from the meeting on March 17th. That the one micro community, they planned to have 10. They ended up only funding 3. And then 2 of them were refunded after year 1. The third, I believe, is still in existence, but according to their council action, it was not refunded. Each of those had an occupancy roughly the same as what will be planned for the micro community here in town. So again, thank you for allowing me the time to.
Okay, so point is, Sheila Montney, she brought the facts. She said, hey, these micro communities haven't been successful in other areas, and we really need to think about the unintended consequences here. No money has really been allocated to this yet, but it's going to take $700,000 to kind of run on a yearly basis. And the initial cost of building it, which I'm not sure if they're going to rely totally on private donations, Home Sweet Home Ministries. And like I said, I am not against helping homeless individuals. There was a homeless individual or a former homeless individual who spoke at the meeting. And yes, to see his life turn around, but you have got to want it, right? And building this you might wind up with a situation where Seattle, they've got all these people with no ties to the community moving in to try to get into these essentially probably free facilities. And are they really wanting, what's the difference here? Okay, they're going to be housed, but are they going to use this housing as a way to turn their life around? Or are they going to use the housing as essentially tents, better tents, you know what I mean, and still not contribute and wind up returning to homelessness, or worse, using it as a place to cook meth, using it as a place to get high? You know, what kind of oversight is going to be over these? And I'd imagine Home Sweet Home Ministries is going to be involved, and I would hope that there'd be proper oversight. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We are going to get to the thousands of bills that have now been introduced at the State House, and some of them are really wacky, legalizing prostitution, assaulting police officers. Sonia Massey is her name. Sonia Massey, the woman who threw the pot of boiling water, by the way, at this police officer. Now, I don't like the police officer at all. I think that he totally did not go about this the right way. He was combative from the start. Clearly, this person was having a mental episode. Unfortunately, this officer was not maybe trained or compassionate, somebody that you don't want in law enforcement, right? And he was combative with her, and he didn't de-escalate the situation, but he didn't escalate the situation. Okay, I would argue that she escalated the situation by throwing a pot of boiling water, and then he shot her because this was a weapon of deadly force. Okay, so definitely there's an argument to be made that he used force to take down an assailant who was wielding a deadly weapon against him, which is a pot of boiling water. You have to understand, even if this person is mentally ill, throw a pot of boiling water at an officer, she takes his gun and goes and shoots up more and more people. You know, that's what an officer's mind, where an officer mind goes when facing somebody who is mentally ill and is trying to hurt them. Okay, they think this person's going to take me down, get my gun, take my gun, and go hurt more people. So you have to meet that with sometimes a deadly response, a shooting, an officer shooting. So anyway, we're going to talk about these bills here next. Good morning. Hey, you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. This is a really hard conversation to have because everybody wants to eradicate homelessness. But from what we've seen in cities like Denver, cities like Seattle, and I understand that the populations are much larger than Bloomington, and it's not Home Sweet Home Ministries. I'm hoping that Home Sweet Home Ministries, they have the proper oversight of this thing. I'd hate to see taxpayer dollars go to this because it's a gamble. You're dealing with people who might potentially want to be homeless, people who are mentally ill and prefer that lifestyle and do not want to leave that lifestyle. You have got to want to leave it. And there was actually a public commenter, and it was a really inspiring story. He left homelessness. He talked about his meth addiction. My concern is that these units are going to be used as essentially their tents. It's just going to be better, a better tent for them, and it could possibly draw people with no ties to the community to come into these units. And I don't know, is there going to be a crazy increased call to these units? I mean, we're dealing with people who are homeless. A lot of, if you look at the homeless population, a lot of drug addiction. Okay, and I mean, essentially, are these going to be well, Illinois, they actually, and we'll get into this bill, it's probably one of the crazier bills that they've got advancing right now at the State House, an overdose prevention site, right, where the, who is it, the Department of Human Services, DHS, Illinois Department of Human Services, they're going to oversee, the state agency is going to oversee an overdose prevention center, which is a fancy word for you can come to this facility and get high, and we won't arrest you, essentially. So I hope that it doesn't wind up where this is going to be a place where a ton of people just wind up, lighting up or getting high in these units. And how do you police that sort of thing? You're dealing with a homeless population, and it's inevitable that the majority of the homeless population, it's a drug thing. So I've got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to get into the Illinois bills. Bottom line, it's a tough thing, but we have to understand that there's going to be unintended consequences here. with the build out of this shelter. And we did it for, 21 chronically homeless individuals in Bloomington. I really think that we could address some of these root causes instead of just throwing micro communities at the problem. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Yeah, a micro party town. I mean, I hate to say this, but I mean, there's homeless, there's mentally ill, there's drug addiction, and I would say most of the homeless population drug addicts. Okay, which then you have to look at the root cause of the drug addiction, and you have to try to solve the drug addiction, crisis that we've got in this country and in this state. And how do you do that? Mandated rehabilitation centers, court order, you slap them with a drug offense, right? You cuff them, you have them go before a judge, and the judges order them to a mandatory rehabilitation center and make that mandatory and try to get them off the drugs. It's tough, right? Drug addiction, it's not easy to fight, but it's not something that we should be gambling with, okay? And really, what this is going to ultimately do is provide a place, a shelter for them to possibly do drugs in these shelters. And then you're going to have calls going to Bloomington Police Department to go police that area. And when you mix drugs and people, right, there's bound to be violence, like, for example, Sheila Montney, she had described in Denver. And you're seeing this. The statistics speak for themselves. In Denver, you had people who returned to homelessness. Okay, they didn't even use the micro communities, these buildings that they built in these cities, and then they ultimately died. A lot of them were dying because this was a place to kind of shield the homeless. And shield their drugs. They're open, and they weren't getting arrested. They weren't going to court. They weren't going to these facilities to get clean. Okay, where a lot of judges will order mandatory rehabilitation. We need to get better about that. We need to maybe even open up more centers for mandatory rehabilitation. Open up mental institutions. Okay, I would say that largely the homeless population are people who are addicted to drugs, like this guy that spoke at public comment. He said that he got off the meth, and ultimately getting off the meth is probably what returned him to civility, to civil society. And that is something that you've got to address. And Home Sweet Home Ministries did that for him because it's a Christian-led organization, and they know how to, get people off. And I'm saying that those organizations are great. Those are great things for the community. It's not up to the taxpayer, though, to gamble with this, and to throw our money at something that really can only be solved by counseling and people who are trained to pull people off of drugs. Throwing money at it and throwing money at buildings, $2.5 million it is, I think it is, that's going to cost. Throwing money to build these facilities is not going to address the root cause, and ultimately it might even cause the problem to worsen, as we've seen in Seattle, because you've built a draw now. You've built this facility, advertise it, homeless people can come live here, and then they go live there, and then they bring their crack pipes or their meth, and they wind up hurting each other. So there could be some severe unintended consequences here. And, you're putting a lot of, if Home Sweet Homes is the oversight on this, that's, 48, what is it, 48 units? That's a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a mentally ill person. I lived next to him. He was also addicted to drugs. I'll tell you about that story maybe in the next break, but we've got to come back for our ready friends. And I do want to get to these Illinois bills, but short story. He was mentally ill, and I'm telling you right now, the apartment complex that I lived in, there was one little that they could do. Two, could you imagine having 48 drug addicted or possibly mentally ill people to oversee? And does Home Sweet Home Ministries have the capability to provide that oversight for these 48 units? Those are questions that should have been asked and brought out in the council meeting. We're back. Woo! Hey, find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Subscribe, like the video, share it out with your friends. It's very important. We're talking local news today. We were covering the city council meeting. Sheila Montney, she brought some facts to the table. Hey, these micro communities haven't worked in Denver. They haven't worked in Seattle. I'm looking at our HUD reports. We've got 60 total unhoused or unsheltered individuals, and then 21 chronically homeless people who might need the housing. Okay, now are we building these for the temporarily homeless individuals, or are we building these for the chronically homeless individuals? These are questions that should have been asked. Also, the oversight of this thing. I was talking to him, we're going to get to these Illinois bills. Crazy bills, for like thousands upon thousands, 4,000 bills that have been introduced by these Illinois lawmakers in the state house. And it's just like every single one of them is probably, if I was an Illinois lawmaker, I would not make a single bill. I'd actually go through and I'd start repealing some of them. And I would vote no on every single bill that came up, because at this point, we need to start following the laws, not crafting more. I think that they've just got way too much time on their hands to be crafting this many bills. I'm sorry. There's just too many. But we're going to get to it. These overdose prevention centers, okay, this is something that is advanced, where they want to build one of these things. It was multiple. They've got it down to just one, where it's going to be oversaw. The oversight is the Illinois Department of Human Services. And essentially what this is, overdose prevention center. This is where you can go and bring your little heroin baggies and go get high at this facility inside these walls under the oversight of the Illinois Department of Human Services. I fear that these units, 48 of them, that are planned for Bloomington, they approved this resolution for Home Sweet Home to buy this property from Connect Transit. It's on Oakland and Maine. 48 units. I fear that these units are going to wind up being places where, because if you don't address the root cause, you build these, a lot of the homeless population, if you look at, and if you get to the root cause, even the speaker who spoke at public comment during the city council meeting, he admitted to being addicted to meth, getting off of the meth, and Home Sweet Home Ministries got him off of the meth. And such a great story. Love Home Sweet Home Ministries. I have nothing against this organization, by the way. But do they have the capability to oversee 48 units where you're going to have potentially mentally ill, just statistically homeless population, largely people who are drug addicted, largely people who are mentally ill? Are they going to have the ability, Home Sweet Home, to oversee 48 units where they're all possibly getting high inside of these units? And I mean, you saw in Denver the statistics, people were dying, people were going back to homelessness. They weren't successful, these micro communities in other areas. And I wonder what would make Home Sweet Home Ministries different from the people who did it in those areas. I wonder what is different about Bloomington, where this is going to be successful. I doubt it, because we're not getting to the root cause here. The root cause is that they're drug addicted, that they're mentally ill. They need to be arrested for the drug use. They need to be court ordered by a judge to go get rehabilitation. If you're mentally ill, you need to be mental institution. Okay, we close those down. We need to reopen them back up and put our mentally ill in facilities where they can get the help they need. We need to put our drug addicted into facilities where they are ordered to get the help that they need. And I don't know. There were a lot of great facts presented by the council member, Sheila Montney, about these various areas that have done something like this. Anyway, we want to get to this. The Illinois bills, I got to get to this morning, okay? There's so many of them. One, I don't know why you've got so much time on your hands to where you've introduced, Illinois lawmakers have approximately introduced 4,000 bills in the 2025-2026 legislative session year. Among these, House Bill 3518, which would decriminalize prostitution if passed. Okay, and get this, there's another one. House Bill 3458 proposes that mental health can be claimed as a criminal defense when committing aggravated battery against a law enforcement officer. Okay, So essentially, if you claim, I'm mentally ill, that justifies, like, okay, you're mentally ill. That doesn't justify you from committing aggravated battery against a police officer. Okay, you're still going to be charged with aggravated battery despite your mental illness. And then, and here's my opinion, you should be sent to a mental institution where you are kept until you get the help that you need and you can re-enter society without hurting anyone. Okay, but that doesn't exonerate you, or shouldn't, right, from the law. Okay, you're going down a real slippery slope there, Illinois lawmakers, with 3415, or 58, 3458 is that bill. The best bill of all is that they're going to divert $50 million of taxpayer funds to rehabilitating raccoons and skunks. You know, this is almost as good as, I think it was last legislative, not this, or this probably, this one, 2025, 2026 year, but it was the last one, 24, 2025. I actually have a Savannah cat. His name is Panther. He's a sweet boy. I love my cat, and they were actually seeking to outlaw Savannah cats because there was one Savannah cat that got out and started to snarl at this little girl. And this is what the Illinois lawmakers do. They find something to craft a law about, and it like pertains to like one person. Some like, what's next? Are we going to outlaw like pit bulls? You know, because there's been pit bull attacks everywhere. Are we going to outlaw pit bulls or dogs in the state of Illinois? Of course not. They tried to outlaw Savannah cats. I have one. He's a very sweet boy, and like, this is what they do with their time. Your priorities are so out of whack, Illinois. Take a listen. Here we go.
There have been over 4,000 House bills filed already this year. Let's ask some of our Republican members what some of the most ridiculous bills are that they've seen so far.
House Bill 3518, which is the legalization of prostitution. I think it's a really, really bad idea. It kind of speaks for itself. Here in Illinois, I think it will just worsen human trafficking, and that's something I'm extremely passionate about stopping.
The first one that comes to mind is the one where if a person commits aggravated battery on a police officer, but can claim that they're having a mental episode, it's a defense for them. So absolutely the wrong direction in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, it would have to be 2569. That talks about rehabilitating raccoons and skunks, which is insanity when people are drowning in cost of living and soaring property taxes. So our priorities down here are totally out of whack.
There have been
I could have said it better myself. Priorities are totally out of whack. And like I said, 50 million or something like that. Some crazy number that they're going to go to try to rehabilitate the skunks and the raccoons. I don't get it. I like, again, why are we introducing so many bills? That's like 300 bills per representative. You're insane. Stop crafting bills. You got way too many times on your hands. Way too much time on your hands. It feels like that's pretty impossible. And mind you, legislative session is only like from January to May. Okay, so they've only got about like a few months to do this thing, and they've introduced 300 bills per representative about, right? It's insane. And the way the state is currently run, obviously you as a resident, you are so much far worse off because of these bills. It's not like these bills are making your lives any better. A lot of them are the skunk thing, the rehabilitating raccoons, a lot of them. And like I said, the House Bill 3458, it probably comes, and it was stirred up by and in response to Sonia Massey, which on this show we have debunked several times. Sonia Massey did have a pot of boiling water. I don't like the cop. I don't remember the cop's name, but I saw the body cam footage, folks, and we went through it frame by frame by frame. If you guys missed that episode, we've got it archived on YouTube. There was a defense attorney who, I don't believe he was even representing the fellow. He just, went frame by frame by frame and crafted a defense for the police officer. And the police officer was a total jackwag and definitely didn't de-escalate the situation. I wouldn't say he escalated it. She escalated the situation in that she had a pot of boiling water and went to go throw it at the officer, and then he used deadly force. Which, I mean, an officer whose weapon, somebody who's wielding a deadly weapon against you, possibly, right, or a weapon that will completely debilitate or put you down to the ground. Police officers, where their mind goes next, is this individual is going to grab my gun, shoot me, and shoot my fellow officer over here and go shoot other people. Okay, so this individual was clearly mentally ill. He didn't de-escalate the situation, was a terrible cop. I don't think he should have been a cop. But the question isn't, is he a terrible cop or not? The question is, did he act justly in shooting Sonia Massey? I would say, yeah, unfortunately, the pot of boiling water, throwing it at his face, or going to throw it. She was lifting the pot to go throw it. Yeah, so that's where that bill, I think, originates. I would guess that's in response to that situation. And it's just dumb. It's like, okay, this was a situation where you had a woman who was mentally ill. The cop was kind of a jerk. But she did have a pot of boiling water threw it at the officer. That doesn't mean that we should just let mentally ill people get away with quite literally, possibly a battery, aggravated battery. We shouldn't let mentally ill people get off from committing crimes. We should get them the help they need, maybe not serve time in prison, and that's up to obviously the judge. Maybe a mental institution of some kind, an asylum, reopen the asylums. I'm all for that. So this doesn't even begin to touch, by the way, those are just House bills, 4,000. There's like over 2,000 Senate bills. So like, I don't know. These are just foolish, and it doesn't take a genius to know that legalizing prostitution and aggravated assault against a police officer is it's not going to do any good for society. Okay. We know that legalizing prostitution is going to lead to more organized crime, more human trafficking. There's going to be more increased assaults on police officers. We're already dealing with that, assaults from 2020, and the sentiment against police officers. Now they're going to have a cop out where they can say, "Oh, I'm mentally ill and I just punched a cop in the face and I'm mentally ill, so you can't charge me with that," right? So we're already adding to this anti-police rhetoric that we've got in this state. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're adding to the anti-police rhetoric that's already in this state. And, the raccoon skunks thing, I mean, like I said, they would rather help animals than the humans they are elected to represent and put them there in office. They would, and I am all for the little fuzzy little animals and everything like that. But these are the same people who don't even allow, like, I know my, I'm not going to tell you who, but I've got a neighbor and she has a pet raccoon. Love this little pet raccoon. He is the sweetest little boy, but we keep him very, very quiet because the local municipality probably would take him away, because these are the same people who don't allow you to have them as pets and treat them well. They'll dedicate all kinds of taxpayer dollars to create these facilities to house these raccoons and skunks and all of that. But oh, God forbid you have a little pet, a pet raccoon. They'll come and they'll cuff you. For example, in New York, you had that case with, what's his name? It was a little squirrel. I can't remember his name, but they went in, Peanut the squirrel. You guys remember this story where they went in and they killed Peanut because he was a pet, and I guess you weren't supposed to have a pet squirrel, and they went in and they killed the squirrel. That I don't know. These people. Lawmakers continue to do everything in their power to increase tax burdens and increase harm to residents in this state. Then they're supposed to represent you. They don't represent the people of Illinois, and that's clear by the thousands of bills that they've introduced. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. Smash that like button, Cat. Yeah, the thing about the cats, they were trying to ban Savannah cats last legislative session. I haven't even really read into this raccoon bill. I'll have to take a peek. It was, what did Jed Davis say? Here's Jed Davis. He says, let me actually try to find it, the number, and I'll look it up right now. 2569. So this is House Bill 2569. Real quick, I'm just going to go check this out because I haven't read this bill in its entirety, but a licensed wildlife. Yeah, you can't have them as a pet, but they're going to dedicate all kinds of millions of dollars. Now, this isn't going anywhere, this bill 2569. but it amends the wildlife code, provides that striped skunks and raccoons, striped skunks? Okay, I didn't know that there are different kinds of skunks. Aren't they all striped? I don't know. Maybe that, and this is discriminatory. Striped skunks? You're not going to do all skunks? I don't know. Striped skunks and raccoons may be rehabilitated by a licensed wildlife rehabilitator for treatment and release. Okay, so here's what here's what goes on in real life. Okay, and this individual, Amy Briel, I don't know who she's the sponsor. She's a Democrat. She lives in Ottawa. I don't know much about her. Born and raised in LaSalle, full-time legislator, chief of staff to former state Representative Lance Yednick, case worker for domestic violence, sexual assault, attended Illinois State University. Interesting. Lives in Ottawa. Okay, so the real life, and here's what real life is like. Okay, and she says that she has a family farm with her husband and 3 children. Okay, this is at least according to her bio here, so she should know this. Here's what actually happens in life. Okay, you get a wild animal that's in your yard, a pet or a squirrel, a skunk, a rabbit, whatever it is, and if it's having a tough go, you take the thing inside and you rehabilitate it yourself. You feed it, you get online, you look up what to do for the animal if you need to rehabilitate it, or you just leave it alone. That you make the decision as a human. Do I want to help this animal, or am I just going to let nature take its course? Okay. And you can take that animal in and decide to help it, which is totally up to you. You don't need a wildlife preservation license to do it. Okay. If he's in your yard, he's on your property, he's yours now. Okay. That's the way I see it. And he's yours to do with what you please. It's an animal, for God's sakes. You know what I mean? Like, let nature take its course, or you bring it in. Me, I'm the type of person who brings it in. Just naturally. My husband, not so much. He'd be like, no, just let nature do its thing. We're not bringing any animals into the house. So I bring in the little pet and I learn how to take care of him, and I feed him, and I get him up to, and I either keep him. I think that, hey, I can't release him back into the wild. He's my buddy. And I think that he's domesticated enough to keep in our home. Okay. So you either do that, or you have another decision to make. Release him once you take care of him, his little broken leg or whatever he's got going on, and you release him. This doesn't require legislative action. People deal with this kind of stuff all of the time, and we didn't need a bill to deal with it, or $50 million, or at least that's what I'll have to look in the full text, because I wonder where this $50 million number came from. This was reported. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. So you need the licensing. And I'm sure the licensing is going to cost taxpayer dollars. I'm looking for the $50 million number. This is allocating for. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into this a little bit more. Obviously, this is going to take taxpayer dollars, because I have to create a licensing program for people to rehabilitate, and you can become a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. And this is through the Department of Natural Resources. So you're going to be paying people, government employees, to implement this licensing program, essentially. And it's just stuff that we don't need. It's really stuff that we don't need. And these people have way too much time on their hands, in my opinion. If I was a lawmaker, I'd introduce, out of protest, absolutely no bills. And I would just repeal everything. Just take it all away. All of it. Morning. So do appreciate you tuning in this morning. So I looked a little bit more into the raccoon thing, just because I was curious, introduced by this representative. And I find this interesting. She lives on a family farm, so she should get this. You don't need a bill for this. Okay, so the bill, what it does, it creates like a licensing type program. It provides that striped skunks and raccoons may be rehabilitated by a licensed wildlife rehabilitator for treatment and release. So most people, if you got a little critter, you decide if you take them in, you rehabilitate them, keep them as a pet, or release them back into the wild. I mean, you deal with this guy, or you just let nature take its course. I'm the type that brings in the little critter. As some people out there say, just let nature take its course. I'd be the one who brings in the little critter and tries to bring them back and rehabilitate them. And I'd probably keep them as a pet. But here's the thing. You don't need a license to do this. Most people do this already in their day-to-day life, and they deal with it. Why in the world would we need legislation? Why in the world would we need a licensing program? That's going to take taxpayer dollars to facilitate. You got the Department of Natural Resources, and this hasn't gone anywhere. To be clear, this bill probably is going to die. It was referred to Rules Committee, and most likely it's not going to go anywhere. So I wouldn't worry about it. But the fact that you've got this much time on your hands, folks, like this just says it all. I do want to get to the articles of impeachment. We likely are going to have a guest on the show. I hope that he joins us. He's running for Congress. So you've got that to look forward to in the 7:00 hour. But we've also got this Democrat lawmaker, Shri Thanedar. He made good on his promise to introduce articles of impeachment. So he officially did that. And according to Fox News, Shri Thanedar introduced these articles of impeachment on Tuesday afternoon, what was this, on Tuesday afternoon? Yesterday. I wanted to make sure that I had my dates right. So the GOP leaders, they could move to table the motion, a procedural vote aimed to scuttle a piece of legislation without having lawmakers actually vote on the legislation itself. I'd imagine that's what they're going to do. The GOP, they obviously have the majority in the House, and they could just move to, completely not even address this and not vote on it at all. Which is like hilarious if they do that. They could just be like, okay, we're just gonna not vote on this at all and just continue to table it because this is just a joke. The Democrats have struggled to unite behind a message. They really are struggling, the Democrat Party. So they're fighting internally, and it's kind of interesting to see because the DNC vice chair, David Hogg, apparently they're trying to oust him or avoid this election that had already happened. What does that sound like? Oh yeah, the oligarchy, where the voters don't actually, and votes don't mean anything. We just kind of install whoever we want as candidates and as vice chairs of our DNC, and as chairs of our DNC, we just, kind of select whoever we want. And we don't follow elections or votes or anything like that. They are the true oligarchy. So we're going to get to maybe that as well. David Hogg being ousted by his own party, and they can't unite. The Democrat Party is having a very hard time uniting. So we're going to get to the articles of impeachment. And then also maybe a little bit later, if we've got time, Bernie Sanders, his oligarchy tour. Remember the Bernie Sanders AOC oligarchy tour? Hilarious, because I guess he created more caused more climate change than it would take you in 5 years. Okay, so with his private jet tours. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Hey, go ahead and smash that like button and share this out with your friends. We are potentially going to have guest Dylan Van Sil. He's running for Congress against Eric Sorensen. Eric Sorensen. I do want to play this clip. Hold on. I'm going to get to this clip, actually, of Eric Sorensen because you guys are going to love it. And if he comes on, we're going to have to see if he comes on. If he comes on, we are going to get his reaction to this clip. He put it on Twitter. I got to find it. Sorry, folks. I'll get it. Don't you worry. When we come back, we are also going to get into these articles of impeachment. I'm going to pull this clip up of Eric Sorensen. Hold on one quick second. Smash the like button and subscribe while you're here. See, I promised you I'd be right back. This is Eric Swarns, and I was pulling this up on the fly. I kind of want Dylan, if he joins us here this morning, to react to this. But let's take
Hi there, everybody. Congressman Eric Sorensen getting ready to go to the House Agriculture Committee. Why don't you come with me?
Okay, number one, that tie is actually ridiculous.
What we're going
Sorry.
to do here
That's
for
just so
today
distracting.
is take up a vote. And this vote's probably going to last us, gosh, it probably could even last us until sometime.
Like, I don't know. I'm still hung up on the tie, folks. Why have such an outrageous tie? Like, why can't you just have a red tie, a blue tie, and just a plain suit? Why do you got to be so out there? And that's what I can't stand about leftists, and leftism. They've always got to be out there and different. Why can't you just conform?
Late tomorrow. What it's going to be all about is it's funding these huge tax cuts for the wealthiest of Americans, the wealthiest people that walk on the face of the earth. Where are we going to get the money to give them the biggest tax cut in history? It's taking it away from hungry people. It's taking $300 billion away from hungry people. I'm going to say hell no to that. Because I have come to Congress to lower the costs for my constituents, because there's more than 60,000 families in our district alone that have trouble putting food on their table. And so I'm going to go right now into the House Agriculture Committee, speak my mind, because that's what you should expect from me, but it's also making sure that my vote counts in House Agriculture, because we have to stand up for the people that we serve.
This is just so tiring. Actually, let me pull this up. And it's an article from Center Square. So you'll find that a lot of these cuts that DOJ has made to this agriculture sector, okay, the Department of Agriculture, there's a lot of just wasted money to organizations that aren't actually feeding people, and rather they're paying people salaries, and they're running, a program that maybe feeds, or maybe will help a family or two. But here's the crux of the problem here. The tax cuts are going to provide more money for everybody. The tax cuts are for everybody. Okay. The tax cuts that Donald Trump wants to implement are for everybody. And if he does that, then you're going to have more money in your pocket to where you don't have to rely on said program that's skimming off the top here, folks, of these government dollars, and they're paying themselves with it. You wouldn't need all of these programs if you just kept the money, and it's like a snake eating its tail. You take money from all the people to implement these programs. You've taken so much money from these people where they can't go live on themselves or live by themselves and feed themselves. Okay. Why did we ever get to a point in society where it's like necessary to have these types of programs? It shouldn't be. These types of programs shouldn't be the norm. These are social programs that, in a time of maybe economic hardship for the country, like wartime or something like that, maybe a social program like this would be justifiable, like to feed the homeless or whatever, or to feed the hungry. But if you were to just give the people their damn money and stop taking it from them, they might be actually able to feed themselves. You take the money from the people, you implement these programs, and then subsequently, these programs have all of these various salaried employees who are taking a good portion of the money that they take away from you. So that's the crux of the issue here. All right, let's get into articles of impeachment. Here next on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat City's 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normals. I do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. I do want to get into these articles of impeachment. Okay, so apparently this guy, Shri Thanedar, he made good on his promise. He promised that he was going to start up these articles or introduce these articles of impeachment officially, and he has done so. This is just totally ridiculous. This isn't going anywhere. Okay, just to clue you in, like the most likely what the GOP is going to do with this, they're going to table this and they're never even going to vote it down. Okay, so they have the majority; they could vote this down if they want to, but most likely they're going to do like a procedural vote to table this motion, so that way they don't have to vote on this at all and give it any kind of breath or acknowledgement. Okay, most likely that's going to be the GOP move here. But let's take a listen to Shri Thanedar and his introduction here of these articles of impeachment.
Impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolution: impeaching Donald John Trump, President of the United States, for high crimes and misdemeanors. Resolved that Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to impeaching.
Okay, so there you have it. This is the articles of impeachment. I don't know. They said bribery. They said all kinds of different things: obstruction of justice, corruption, abuse of trade powers, among other things. These are the charges this Indian-born Michigan Democrat, Shri Thanedar, introduced 7 articles of impeachment against Trump, and in late April. Okay, now he officially filed these. Now, Democrats, they've struggled to unite. Okay, and they're having a hard time struggling, or they're struggling because they keep going and they keep falling back on this, and it never works. Trump bad. I hate the orange man, and they're just wasting their time. That's the one thing that they can unite behind, and like that's it. There's nothing else uniting this Democrat Party, and eventually maybe we'll get into the DNC Vice Chair David Honk. He's being ousted. But like I said, this isn't going anywhere. And what's really unfortunate is this vote politically for the Democrats. It's going to make them more vulnerable because you're dedicating like you're sending a message that orange man bad again, and it's not going to win you back the House majority in 2026. It just won't. And in fact, I would say that being that Donald Trump won the 2024 election, Democrats are going to be forced to vote on this if it does wind up coming to that. And like I said, I don't know if the GOP will ultimately do this. Maybe if the GOP does this would be smart politically if they do take it up to a vote, and then you can weed out the Democrats and get the Democrats to vote against or to vote on these articles of impeachment, and that could leave them vulnerable to challengers, primary challengers, for 2026. You've shown your cards, with this vote. So politically, it could be perilous for some of their most vulnerable members as they work to win back the House majority in 2026. Taking a vote on this is probably not in their best interest, because that essentially gives the GOP a whole deck of cards, and they're like, okay, this person voted to impeach Donald Trump. We're going to primary him, or we're going to run somebody in this district, and we're going to run on that. And, because Donald Trump is so popular and won in 2024, I'd argue by kind of a landslide, okay, probably not something you want your members, the Democrat members, to be doing is voting on articles of impeachment right now. Unite behind something substantial, AOC, Bernie Sanders screaming at the sky about the oligarchy is just not working. This is what Thanedar said. He said Donald Trump has unlawfully conducted himself, bringing shame to the presidency and the people of the United States. All this proves is how deeply unserious they are as a party, and they're not about solving real issues for Americans. And all this shows is that they despise Donald Trump. And we already knew that. Okay. They don't intend to represent you. They just want to show you how much they despise Donald Trump. And I hope that they do take a vote on this, because some of their more vulnerable members of the Democrat Party, this would give the GOP just a field day of running people against the congressmen who vote to impeach Donald Trump. It gives them all kinds of cards. I do want to switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders. Well, before we get into that, we'll talk about the media, and I've got an immigrant story for you. Gosh, these are just so dang popular. The media loves these stories where an American citizen with children got deported, a teenager got deported, a father of 3 got deported. And they throw those things out there, and they don't even attempt to provide truth and facts, and they don't even attempt it. They just run with this misleading claim, and then the damage is already done. Okay, and then they can't take it back. And so the evidence here is overwhelming. This is their latest installment of this. This is an El Salvador teenager. Okay, and they claim that this teenager was sent to El Salvador, or he was a Venezuelan national. He was sent to El Salvador, and he's a member of TDA. This is a gang, okay? A TDA terrorist, again. And they said, he had no previous offenses, no criminal record. This actually meant, of course, the media, when they come out and say this, and that there's no evidence of a criminal record, this means that he's actually a TDA member, a Venezuelan national with a criminal history. By the way, he actually was in possession of a firearm and on school grounds. Okay, so one of the biggest, I don't know, you're on school grounds and you're carrying a firearm, and he's got ammunition feeding devices. Okay, the Department of Homeland Security, they put this out on social media. TDA terrorist, Venezuelan national, Manuel Alberto Gurtiz Flores. I don't know, I'm butchering his name. I really don't care, because this guy's got a criminal history of being on school grounds with a weapon. Okay. And then they say Trump and Secretary Kristi Noem, they are getting these criminals out of the country. Okay. The fact that these are the best people they can find in the media is putting these people out there as poster children or poster childs. And they're like, hey, look at Donald Trump is deporting this poor teenager. This is the best you can find. What's wrong with you? Why would you put this? Tells you all you really need to know about the illegal immigration system, or illegal immigration situation, by the way. Okay, so here is this piece from Rolling Stone. Get a whiff of this one, okay? Wilmer Gurtiz last saw his son the morning of February 24th. Later that day, his nephew called to tell him that his 19-year-old Manuel Gurtiz was arrested just steps from their shared apartment in the Bronx. Okay, so he gets arrested. Officers grabbed him and 2 other boys right at the entrance of this apartment building. And one said, allegedly, right, somebody said, no, he's not the one. And then the cops were saying, take him anyway. Okay, so this is how this interaction went on the steps of this apartment building. Somebody is reporting that this is how it went down, that, somebody said, oh, he's not the one, take him anyway. I mean, you couldn't write, so fictitious. I can already tell, Rolling Stone, that this did not happen the way you are reporting it. And I mean, this is just so silly. The officer, so the guy who's reporting this, I guess it was Wilmer Gurtiz, or the nephew. His nephew called to tell him. Okay, so his nephew is the one who had said that the cops were saying, "Oh no, he's not the one. Grab or take him anyway. Take him. He's not the one you're looking for. Take him anyway." The cops say, "Okay, whatever." So this kid, or this teenager, Manuel. He was among the 238 Venezuelans deported to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, according to Documented, a newsroom reporting on immigrant communities in New York City. He had no criminal record. Okay, this is what Rolling Stone says. Neither in Venezuela or the U.S. And does not have any tattoos, which is one of the criteria ICE officers are using to claim that migrants are members of TDA, this gang. Well, it turns out all of that couldn't be further from the truth. He does, in fact, have a criminal record. And here's the thing. Rolling Stone put out this article, and the damage has already been done. They made the cops look like they took the wrong guy. They made him look like they were verify and seeing if he's got gang tattoos, which is not the criteria, by the way, as to why Kilmar Abrego Garcia got deported. He got deported because he's on body cam footage with people that appears to be smuggling into the country, human smuggling. He was also a wife beater by his wife's own admission. There's multiple reasons, and he had legal deportation orders drafted up by judge, 2 of them, and he went before, I think it was 17 judges or something like that. So it wasn't just the tattoos that got Kilmar deported, by the way. So that is not a criteria that ICE agents are using solely. Of course, you've got judges and you've got people drafting up legal deportation orders and saying, hey, we verified ICE. We verified that this person is not on a student visa, work visa, or green card. They're here in the country illegally. The judges say, okay, here's a deportation order. That's your due process. You send them. Okay, so like I said, this guy, there is evidence. William Parra, an attorney, and this is the Rolling Stone article. Okay, here we go. William Parra, an attorney for Inmigración al Día. This is like a law firm representing this kid's case, the teenager, says that Merwill's detention was unjustified as he has an immigration court case pending with his father and taking the proper steps to formalize his situation. If you're here in the country illegally and you are taking the steps to formalize, so like green card, right? You're on this temporary status waiting for the formal, yes, you have your green card. They're not deporting those people. This person was detained. This is what the attorney says, for hanging out with his friends, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. ICE was not looking for him, nor was there any evidence whatsoever that Merwill was in any gang. Okay, so the lawyer claims there's no evidence. He has a criminal history, and like I said, he's here illegally, and he has a criminal history, and he was deported under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Okay, so, I mean, he has the criminal history. It includes possession of a firearm on school grounds with ammunition feeding devices. Obviously, there's evidence to suggest that on top of being in the country illegally, he's also a criminal. So nonetheless, it's stories like this that prove exactly why the media is totally untrustworthy and irrelevant at this point. And shows like this are becoming more and more relevant. And I'm glad that you're here. Subscribe to the channel, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And always tune in 6 to 8 on Cities 92.9. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to fight the oligarchy with Bernie Sanders. Actually, I've got the numbers here. Fox News, they did a report on Bernie Sanders, actually, and how much carbon emissions he admitted during his Fight the Oligarchy tour. I'll be right back. Hey, smash that like button. Hit it right now. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Bernie Sanders. But here, I'll share this with you. This is the teen that I was talking about. Right here is his on February 24th, was encountered pursuant to an arrest by New York City Police Department in Bronx County, City of New York, under arrest number redacted. NYPD arrested and charged the subject with the following charges. Criminal possession of a weapon, second degree, loaded firearm on school grounds, criminal possession, stolen property, unlawful possession of ammunition feeding devices. Yeah, this is not in the home, so he's breaking all kinds of New York's laws, okay? And this is his arrest record. This is the guy, okay, that was deported. by ICE agents. What bothers me is Rolling Stone. He's got no criminal history. He's just an upstanding, wrong place, wrong time. He's an upstanding kid. Cut the crap. Okay. So nonetheless, like I said, stories like this prove to you that the media is irrelevant. So smash that like button, because we're going to provide you truth. We're going to do the homework. We're going to look this up on Twitter. Is a great resource. X. Sorry, I got to get used to calling it X. Is a great resource. Just scroll on Twitter and just find like it was primary documentation right there. I saw that on Twitter this morning, and it's like, there's the primary documents, guys. It shows it right here. This Rolling Stone articles is just complete bunk. I do want to talk about Bernie Sanders, AOC. Climate disasters, all their predictions. They don't even believe their own nonsense that they spew, clearly, because they go on these oligarchy tours and these private jets and whatever they do. So they don't actually believe climate change is an existential threat and it's going to kill people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Okay. So Sanders, he admitted he has zero regrets flying, on these private jets, creating more carbon emissions than the average American would ever create in 5 years' time. Okay. They will do whatever that takes to not fly with the measly peasants. Okay. And that's why Bernie Sanders went on these private jets, although he could fly commercial. So Bernie Sanders, fighting the oligarchy, complete hypocrite. He spewed over 60 tons of carbon dioxide via private jets. So carbon emissions more than the average American emits in 5 years. Okay, just on this private little jet tour that he took with fighting the oligarchy. Okay. And like I said, he has zero regrets of doing this. We're going to get into all of it here. And then eventually I'm going to play Eric Sorensen, because Eric Sorensen is out there saying that Donald Trump is taking food out of hungry people's mouths. How could he? Hell no to the GOP plan to cut $300 billion from hungry families. Look, $300 billion, most likely these are cuts to these food programs. And like I said, if we cut these programs, okay, we wouldn't need the taxpayer dollars to sustain these programs, and we could keep those taxpayer dollars. It's the snake eating its tail, right? If you let the people keep their money, they're going to be able to feed themselves. Okay. When you take their money and you give it over to this program, they're going to pay all of their salaried employees, these exorbitant salaries in many cases. They're going to pay all their employees who work with this nonprofit organization that provides services. But first, they're going to pay all their employees, okay, who provide these services. And then you get the food. Okay, but guess what? It's not even all that simple for you to get the food from these people, because you've got to apply, you've got to, do paperwork and all of this, and you got to fight the nonprofits essentially to give you the services. Okay, so rather than just keeping the money in your damn pocket and letting you go to the grocery store and buying food, they want you to pay this service to provide you the free food that you could have just bought yourself. I mean, it's just a workaround so that way you can pay all these people in this nonprofit organization. It's a complete scam. It's a complete scam. All of these programs implemented and facilitated by these nonprofit organizations, it's a complete scam. If you were to just keep the damn taxpayer money in the people's pockets, they'd be able to do the child care, they'd be able to feed their families, they'd be able to do all of the things that you claim to be providing, which you might do a little bit. And plus, these are probably going to be semi or below par. They're not going to be subpar services. Okay, you're going to have daycares that are at best, if you were to keep this money, you get to choose where you send your kid, right? But now you've got all your taxpayer money going to these various programs, and they're the ones who get to decide what kind of services they provide to you. Just keep the money in their pockets. I mean, it's very simple for them to feed them themselves, and then we don't have to pay all these people, and we're to save all this money that we're paying these people and these organizations and these programs that give the food to the people. This isn't rocket science. So, all right, we're going to get to Bernie Sanders. Smash that like button. Whoa. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington normal. Coming up, Congressman Eric Sorensen. He says, I'm voting hell no to the GOP plan to cut $300 billion from hungry people. How could Donald Trump and Doge do this? They're taking $300 billion away from hungry families, and they're taking the food right out of their mouths. Okay, these $300 billion are probably cuts. I don't know where he's getting the $300 billion from, but I'll tell you the short of it, okay? $300 billion, most likely they're cutting that from programs. These programs they're taking money from you, the taxpayer, okay? They take a ton of money from you to give to these people to feed you, okay? Tell me how that makes sense, okay? I'm going to make you, kids, listen up really quick. And I think Ronald Reagan had said this or something to the effect of this, okay? I'm going to make you a conservative in 10 seconds, okay? 10 seconds. Okay, there's this story that I like Ronald Reagan gave. A little girl, she comes up and she talks to Ronald Reagan and she says, I want to be president one day. Well, that's awesome. How noble of you. What do you want to do when you become president? Well, I want to get rid of homelessness. Okay. You can do that. And she goes, I'm going to create a program, right? And I'm going to end homelessness to end the homelessness right here. And it's like, wait a second, just have the homeless guy go I'm going to, cut yards. I'll have to pull the clip. Now I'm messing this up, but I'm going to cut yards and I'm going to take this money and I'm going to give this money to the homeless guy, $20 to the homeless guy to go get a sandwich or something. It's like, why wouldn't the homeless guy just go and just mow the yard himself and just get the $20 and go feed himself? It's kind of like this, where they're taking the money from you for these programs. And then remember, a lot of these programs have very high salaried individuals who are taking off the top of that before they provide you the services, by the way. So let's just call it Hungry Program X. I don't know. There's some nonprofit out there that provides food to hungry families, okay? They take the money from the hungry family, by the way. They give it to this nonprofit organization. They pay themselves with that, and then they provide subpar services to the hungry family. What if we were to just keep that money in the hungry family's pocket so that way they can go and buy the dang food themselves and not rely on Becky, who's making $300,000 a year to provide these types of services? Okay, we don't need to rely on the Beckys. You just let us keep our own money and we'll go feed ourselves. We've got no problem doing that, Eric. So I want to play this clip. Actually, I'll just play it now. Yeah, I've got time. I'll play this clip from Eric. You guys are going to get a kick out of this. This is Eric Sorensen. He's a congressman in the Illinois 17th district. Take a listen. Here we go.
Hi there, everybody. Congressman Eric Sorensen getting ready to go to the House Agriculture Committee. Why don't you come with me? What we're going to do here for today is take up a vote. And this vote's probably going to last us, gosh, it probably could even last us until sometime late tomorrow. What it's going to be all about is it's funding these huge tax cuts for the wealthiest of Americans, the wealthiest people that walk on the face of the earth. Where are we going to get the money to give them the biggest tax cut in history? It's taking it away from hungry people. It's taking $300 billion away from hungry people. I'm going to say hell no to that. Because I have come to Congress to lower the costs for my constituents, because there's more than 60,000 families in our district alone that have trouble putting food on their table. And so I'm going to go right now into the House Agriculture Committee. Speak my mind, because you know that's what you should expect from me. But it's also making sure that my vote counts in House Agriculture, because we have to stand up for the people that we serve.
Okay, so this is Eric Swanson. Now I want to play for you back to back here. Here's Ronald Reagan and the truth about homelessness and the lack of empathy in Reagan's view. Take a listen here. Here we go.
Asked my friend's little girl what she wanted to be when she grows up. She said she wanted to be the President of the United States. Both of her parents, liberal Democrats, were standing there. So I asked her, if you were president, what would be? Recently asked my friend's little girl what she wanted to be when she grows up.
Okay. For some odd reason, this is getting cut off. So what you wanted to be, what would you do when you're president? Well, I'd end homelessness. Well, you don't have to be president to do that. Okay. You can go cut a yard for $50 and then you can go give it to a homeless person. And then she asked Ronald Reagan, hey, well, why wouldn't the homeless guy just cut the yard himself and not be homeless anymore? Well, that's welcome to the Republican Party. I mean, come on. You're taking money away from people to provide them a service when those people could just keep their money and feed themselves. This isn't rocket science. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Yeah, I want this clip.
She said she wanted to be the President of the United States.
I got to find it. I'm going to find the full clip, but I'm sure you've seen it before. There's I've seen that clip so many times. But it's so true. Why would you take money away from people just to provide them a service? And then on the top of that, you're having all of these people collect a check. Okay, the money that you take from these people, and there's this program, and this program has a program supervisor, an executive director, whatever it is, and they get all kinds of money, and then they're providing the services that you could just do yourself. Damn it. We're gonna get to Bernie Sanders here in just a second. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. You can go to cities929.com today and check out our cruise stops. Yes, we've got all kinds of them coming up. You can win a Caribbean cruise. You heard me correctly, from Expedia Cruises. You can register for the cruise at an upcoming cruise stop this spring. We will be taking entries, drawing 2 finalists to win a prize pack and qualify for a spot at our grand prize giveaway on June 26th at the Smash House Tavern. You got to be 21 years of age to enter, and we're going to be drawing 2 finalists at each stop. So the first finalist is going to be within their first 30 minutes of the 2-hour live broadcast, and then the second is going to be at the end of the broadcast. You got to be present to win. So we've got a stop coming up Friday, May 16th, the Eagles Club, 5 to 7 p.m. Tuesday, May 20th, running errands from 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday, May 21st, Jack's Cafe from 9 to 11 a.m. We've got so much more to get to this morning. I do want to get to Bernie Sanders. Sorry, I went off on a tangent with Eric Sorensen. I mean, I just can't handle these people where they're like, oh, they're taking money out of the hungry people's mouths. Okay, just let the hungry people keep their money and stop taking their money to give to Becky, who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars in a salary, to administer a program to feed these people, when you could just cut out the middleman. Okay, just get rid of the middleman here and let the people feed themselves. Okay, and really what it is, it's these nonprofit organizations. They're all buddies with these politicians, and they don't want to work in the private sector because they don't want to create anything, do anything. They don't know how, and really it's not their fault. It's their products of the public education system. All right, let's get to Bernie Sanders. He admitted more carbon than the average American will in 5 years, by the way, on this oligarchy, fight the oligarchy tour that he took with AOC. There was a report done by Fox News and Power the Future. They examined Senator Bernie Sanders' travel across 16 stops with his Fight the Oligarchy tour. And it's proven now that he has spewed 60 tons of carbon emissions via the private jets that he took. He didn't go fly commercial, although he could have in several instances. This group, it's called Power the Future. He burned enough fuel to undo the carbon capturing, by the way, of 2,900 trees. So the carbon capturing work of 2,900 trees, he destroyed that carbon capturing. He burned enough fuel to undo all that carbon capturing. Now they looked at his actual flight list, and he could have flown commercial for nearly all of his flights. Okay. Sanders repeatedly opted for the carbon heavy travel method of private jetting everywhere around. So there was definitely routes where nearly all his routes were serviced by commercial airlines, many offering multiple nonstop options that would have fit his schedule. He chose not to do that. He didn't want to fly with, obviously, the peasant people. And here's what bothers me about this whole thing. It's not so much that he took the private jets. It's that he screams about climate change, that it's an existential threat, so much so that it's a national security issue. This is what Bernie Sanders has said. But those warnings don't apply to him. He's a hypocrite. He doesn't want to fly with the rest of us. Take a listen. This is him from March 2019, and then I'm going to play his recent comments when he was questioned by Bret Baier on Fox News about his private jetting for the Fight the Oligarchy tour. Take a listen.
Today we say to Donald Trump and the fossil fuel industry that climate change is not a hoax, but is a massive threat, an existential threat to our country and the entire planet. Came here to Iowa, and I was asked, what is the major national security issue we face? And people thought I'd say ISIS or Al Qaeda, and those are big issues. The answer that I gave in terms of national security is climate change.
You raised the issue, George, of climate change. And the comments a moment ago that Larry Kudlow made are so irresponsible, so dangerous, that it's just hard to believe that a leading government official could make them. What the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said is that We have 12 years to substantially cut the amount of carbon in our atmosphere, or this planet, our country, the rest of the world is going to suffer irreversible damage. We are in crisis mode, and you have an administration that virtually does not even recognize the reality of climate change, and their policies working with the fossil fuel industry are making a bad situation worse.
Well, you know, when you deal, Anderson, with
Now, this is from October 2021. Take a listen.
the existential threat of climate, and the scientists tell us we have a handful of years in order to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel, that's a high wire act. I think it is morally irresponsible, inconceivable, that this country is not leading the world in cutting carbon emissions and taking on the fossil fuel industry.
You've gotten criticized from other people. Free Beacon says Bernie Sanders spent $221,000 on private jets fighting the oligarchy tour paid for by friends of Bernie Sanders. That you've spent millions of dollars in campaign funds on private jet travel over the years. How do you push back on both of those things?
When's the last time you saw Donald Trump during a campaign mode at National Airport?
No, it doesn't. But he's also not fighting the oligarchy.
No. You run a campaign and you do 3 or 4 or 5 rallies in a week. The only way you can get around to talk to 30,000 people. Think I'm going to be sitting on a waiting line at United, waiting, 30,000 people are waiting. That's the only way you can get around. No apologies for that. That's what a campaign.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. I mean, this person is not Bernie Sanders is not serious about fighting climate change. Okay, he doesn't want to fly with the peasantry. Okay, we have several years left to figure out how to substantially cut the carbon from our atmosphere. And he's burning enough fuel. If we only have, a certain amount of years, and I'm going to get to AOC here in just a second, because she actually claimed that we're going to all be gone 12 years after 2019, and the world's going to end because of climate change. They say that we have a finite number of years to cut the carbon from our atmosphere. Otherwise, the planet's going to explode. And I tell you guys this all the time. I take great peace with the planet ending. The world will pass away. The word is forever, right? And we know biblically that the world will end. Just read Revelation. But anyway, so he's saying that we have a finite number of years, that we have to substantially cut carbon out of our atmosphere. And then at the same time, he is burning enough fuel to undo the carbon capturing work of 2,900 trees. This was done, a study that was done by this group in Fox News, Power the Future. They examined his private jets trips, and it was just insane. A 60.7 tons of carbon emissions. That, of course, is more than more carbon you would burn more carbon or of the same amount of carbon in 5 years, the average American. Okay. And he did it all in a week. So AOC, she's got climate predictions as well. I want to get to her because she was also on this trip, also private jetting around, likely private jetting around. AOC, I hope she runs for president in 2028. Don't forget that this is what she said. Here's her climate predictions from 2019. Here we go.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue.
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. You would think somebody with that worldview, somebody with that kind of prediction, we've only got a few years left at this point. It was in 2019. We've only got a few years left before the world ends. You would think that she would be doing everything in her power to ensure that we don't fuel the work or we don't burn the fuel that Bernie Sanders burned. Okay, you would think that she'd be doing everything in her power, but these people don't believe in their own crap that they spew. Okay, and the rules are for you, The rules are not for them. It's rules for thee, not for me. They want you to give up your luxuries, your lifestyle, your meat. They don't want you to eat red meat anymore. They want you to do everything. They want you to give up everything that you enjoy in life. Okay, even your dog. Okay, there's been media reports that your dog emits carbon, and you got to be, conscious of how much dog you are, because the dog food industry, blah blah blah. They want you to give up your luxuries and your lifestyle, but they have no intent of doing that themselves. Okay, so the whole "we must end climate change," they actually mean you must. You must, not us. Rules for you all, but not for me. And I'm sorry, but this is evidence that you are the oligarchy. You are the oligarchy. But I mean, again, I say it all the time. The left, they wouldn't have any standards at all if they weren't double standards. And I can tell you right now that they have no interest in actually saving the planet. This is just something that they use to control you. Okay. It has everything to do with controlling every tiny little aspect of your life, right down to whether or not you should have a dog and what kind of food you should eat and where you should live. And what kind of transportation you should drive, and everything about to control your life. And it has nothing to do with actually saving the world, because if they were serious about it, then they would be giving up luxuries or changing their lifestyle to address carbon emissions. All right, I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. We are going to be coming back here shortly, and we are going to wrap up the show. Go ahead and share this, archive this, star it. We're going to be right back. I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. I hope you have a great rest of your day today. I am so glad that you have tuned in to Cities 92.9. Go ahead and head on over to cities929.com for me, though, real quick. Feed the Farmers is back. It's time to nominate a farmer who you appreciate. Feed the Farmers is brought to you by Corn Belt Energy, the good guys at Parker Chevy, Compeer Financial, and Linco Precision. They're feeding up the farmers again this year. Nominate a farmer at our website, cities929.com. We're going to deliver freaky fast Jimmy John subs to them while they're working out in their fields. So be sure to do that. Big news, Memorial Day. Memorial Day, we are going to be doing a very special show. I'm going to be having a ton of veterans on. Veterans that have served this country, Air Force veterans, Army veterans, Marines, a helicopter mechanic who had served in the U.S. Army. We're going to be talking with David Freeze. He was in the U.S. Air Force. He's a current state representative. We're going to be talking with Dan Calkins, was a former state representative, served in the U.S. Army. Mike Kirkton served in the U.S. Army. Bronze Star, by the way. Janet Kirkton, his wife, she also served this country. Memorial Day, we're going to be paying tribute to those who lost their lives in the line of duty as well. Go ahead and go to cities929.com. There's actually a spot where we're inviting you to pay tribute to someone who served this country with courage and dedication. Share the love, share the gratitude, and remembrance of those who truly deserve it. Submit your tribute and help us commemorate them on air this Memorial Day weekend. Okay, so head on over there, click Memorial Day Hero Tribute. You can write a tribute. You can put the name of the hero, first and last name, right there on our website, and we'll read the tributes on the air over Memorial Day weekend. So we invite you to pay tribute to someone who has served our country with courage and dedication. Share the love, gratitude, and remembrance for those who truly deserve it. Submit your tribute and help us commemorate them on air. Please do that at cities929.com. And I'm going to be reading those as well throughout the show on Memorial Day. I'm going to be hoping to read some of those tributes on the show. We're going to be having veterans on who share war stories. I do this every year. It's a lot of fun, and it can get emotional. There's been years where we've cried. There's been years where we laugh. It gets very emotional, that Memorial Day show. We did one in 2022, and I remember just bawling listening to some of the veterans I had in my studio, and it was just it was an emotional time, but we also laugh. There's a lot of fun stories that come out. So we're going to have a whole host of veterans on the program Memorial Day. Look, I always say this: they sacrificed their life for your freedom in this country. You guys know I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus sacrificed his life for our spiritual freedom, our eternal life that we get to have with God in heaven, and Jesus' sacrifice. But there is no greater love than this, than to lay one's life down for a friend. And it's truly a sacrifice. Even the service members' families go through a sacrifice. They're off overseas, or they're spending so much time. Even if they're not overseas, they're spending time and dedicating their lives to serving this country. And that sacrifice should be honored, and it should be something that we broadcast here on Cities 92.9 and share with you. And that I am a firm believer of that. So we gotta go, but I sure hope you tune into the Memorial Day. It's going to be on Memorial Day special program. Earlier in the show, we talked about Bloomington okaying this. They okayed this shelter village plan. Home Sweet Home Ministries. They're turning the Connect Transit site into a housing, like a micro community. Sheila Motney, she actually provided some statistics about where they've done this elsewhere in the country. And it turns out these micro communities don't work out so well. And that's something that she encouraged the councilman to take into account when voting on this resolution to allow for the sale of this property. Now, as for money goes, the whole thing is planned to expected to cost like $2.65 million to build, and then it's going to be $700,000 a year to run. They're planning to use private donations, but also a combination of public funds, grants, state grants, federal grants. We'll have to see. I don't know. At the end of the day, like I said, the government, their job was never charity. You guys have a blessed day. They're like I said, their job was never charity, and this is going to cost the Bloomington taxpayers money in the future. So we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Or 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Sorry, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, and on, of course, the radio program 92.9. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye. Love you.